Hello, welcome back to the channel. So this is a long-awaited video all about setting up a 180 degree perspective corrected outside view using multiple projectors on a curved screen and with Fly Elise NG's Immersive Display Pro and Immersive Calibration Pro software. I redid my visual system a few weeks ago initially using these tools, and I've been very happy with the result. It's much better than using a single stretched outside view as I was using, and the ability to be able to see right out to either side of you, particularly when turning and looking for airports and runways, is a real improvement to the immersion experience. But to get there I had to do a lot of work, and in particular I had to move from a single PC system back to a multi-PC system. I did originally set this up on my single simulator PC. Wanted to see how fast it could be. The answer is not especially when you've got the two outside views running. The frames drop into the 20s. I mean, it depends where you are, but I'm talking in the heavy scenery areas in central London, and that's just sort of sitting static. At the airport, once you start moving and turning, you're getting frame rates dropping up and down into the teens, and on takeoff, everything's very stuttery and not particularly smooth. And so I realised that a single PC system just wasn't going to cut it. I know some people have them and say they work for them, and I guess if you have the right scenery, then maybe it does. But I'm using Orbex, which is probably the most FPS unfriendly scenery there is, and I'm using it in areas like London, which is, I think, generally known as being an FPS challenge, even compared to some other bigger cities like New York. For whatever reason, no one really seems to know. I think it may something to do with the geography and the sheer amount of stuff that you can see. But London, I guess, with several major airports in easy reach, particularly if you have complex add-on airports, you can see why it might get a bit slow there. So I went back to a multi-PC setup, and that took me a little while to get working. And then once I had that all up and running, I thought I should make a video about the process. And then, as if by magic, one of my projectors failed. And when I say failed, it keeps intermittently cutting off. And I've taken it apart and looked at it, and I think it could be one or two different bits that could be broken, but I've reached the point where I don't really want to experiment anymore. All the parts are quite expensive. They take a long time to be delivered. If I take it to a service centre to get serviced, it'll cost a lot of money, and I can't buy another one of those projectors for love nor money now because they're out of production, and all of the ones that were out there have been snapped up. So what I've actually done is upgrade to a pair of newer projectors in the same model, same series, from BenQ, and just got those fitted today. And as a result, I need to redo my screen warping and blending, and I thought, here's a good opportunity to make a video about it, and that's what I'm doing. So in order to make this happen, I've had to set up a few things. This is the Fly Elise NG website, which shows you the products that they have, and in particular, we'll take a quick look at the Immersive Display Pro product. So Immersive Display Pro is their equivalent of the Enthusiasm software that I used to use. It is the bit that does the warping and blending, and it's the bit that you have running in the background that corrects your display whilst things are running. But then you notice it also talks about here Immersive Calibration Pro. That's a separate piece of software that you can use to set up your warp and blend, and also to generate the necessary projections for your 180 degree wraparound view. And this is actually what we're going to be demonstrating rather than this, and we'll get into this at the end, but this is where the action's actually happening. And Immersive Calibration Pro is now being sold as an add-on tool to this. Originally it was a separate tool that you could buy separately, but now it's just become a feature of this at higher version levels. So if we go to the order page, you can see they sell it in three versions: Basic, Advanced, and Ultimate, and they have different features depending on what level you go at. And they also have PC locked and USB dongle licenses. PC locked is locked to your particular PC. USB dongle, they send you a dongle that you plug into the PC that activates the license. If you're likely to change your hardware a lot, or even if you just rebuild your sim a fair bit, if you're in experimental mode, I strongly advise you get the USB dongle, even though it is more expensive, because if you keep changing your PC to the point where the hardware ID changes and you keep emailing support saying, would you please regenerate my PC locked license, my understanding is they'll do it once and then they'll tell you no. And it is within the terms of their license that they can do that. So although I think it's slightly dodgy practice personally, I can see why they want to avoid people buying it and reusing it across multiple PCs, because after all, what guarantee do they have that you're not doing that? I think you should trust your users a little bit more, especially in this community, but I can see why. And so I went for the USB dongle license. At the moment I just have the one because I started out with just the one machine. I'm going to need to buy another one to complete the system that I've got now. But I didn't want to buy it until I was sure it was going to work for me, and I was happy with everything. But the point being that you need to buy the Ultimate Edition in order to get hold of the Calibration Pro tool. So without it, you can't use it. I mean, you can download Calibration Pro and use it all you like, but the output from that, the calibration files, cannot be imported into Immersive Display Pro and used unless it's the Ultimate version. So you need to be aware of that, and it has to be Ultimate on every machine. So as you can see, it gets expensive quite quickly. Okay, so to make this work, I've had to set up multiple PCs. So the PC you can see here is my main desktop PC. Now, it's not part of the simulator, but it is where I'm going to run all of the calibration tools, because it's the easiest place for me to sit and do that. And then I also have the two image generator PCs up and running, each one controlling one projector, and we'll set those up in a sort of client-server scenario, and the software works in that distributed manner, which is good, because if you had a big simulator installed with lots of machines, you wouldn't want to be messing around with reconnecting projectors to other machines, and it would all get very messy very quickly. So I have my two image generator machines here using Type VNC. Top tip, by the way, although Windows includes remote desktop and it's very easy to enable remote desktop, and actually I use remote desktop for most of my remote use, you can't run prepared or certain other kinds of graphical app under a remote desktop session, because it sort of plugs itself into the display stack, whereas VNC, and I prefer Type VNC because it's small and fast, simply copies the output of your display and sends it across the network. So everything works under this, including P3D. Images on this will be stuttery, even though they're not stuttery actually on the screen. But this is a really good tool for remote controlling machines that are running things like the flight simulator. So that's a top tip for you. And then I have the Immersive Calibration Pro software here on my main PC, and I also have it on these two PCs as well. One thing you need to do on every machine that you're going to use this software on is to install Bonjour, or Bonjour if I'm saying it with a proper accent. Bonjour is a piece of software from Apple that is part of their Zero configuration stack. I have no idea why FlyElise decided to use Bonjour rather than DCOM or something like that, but they did, and so you need to install it. So you can just double click on this install first Bonjour batch file to do that, and I've already done that on all these machines, so you don't need to see that. They include a bunch of PDFs that walk you through the software step by step. Not the most comprehensive or comprehensible instructions, which is why I thought a video would be useful, but it's they're pretty useful, and you should definitely look through them if you're going to use this software. And then you have the executables themselves. So you've got single client and server. Ignore service.exe. Service.exe actually does all the work, but these are the things that you need to care about. Single.exe is an old version of the UI designed to be run on a single machine, where the machine that you are running the projectors on is also the machine where you do the setup. This has been, or is being, I understand, discontinued. So I'm not going to go any further with this. This has an older UI and less features than the newer version. And the newer version is broken into client and server. So you run client on the machines that have the projectors on, and then you run the server on the machine where you're going to do all the configuration. And under the hood it uses this service.exe and everything, but you don't have to worry about that. And you don't need to install it either, just grab the zip, put it in a folder, unzip it, and go for it there. It doesn't install anything into Windows or add any registry keys or anything like that, so it doesn't have to be installed in the traditional manner, which is good. You can just drop it on and go. Okay, so to get started, I need to run the client software on each of the image generator PCs. So start here on number 1, run client. Takes a minute to start up. It's minimized itself. I think that was from a previous session. So it knows there's just one display connected to this machine. It's just one projector. Resolution 1920 by 1080, projectors 1 by 1. So it knows about that projector. Notice it says client is not connected because the server isn't running yet. So that's fine. Right, on this machine, run the client. May also minimize itself. Yeah, there you go. And again, it knows that it's a projector. Now, if I had multiple displays connected to these machines, I could obviously pick all these different possible arrays of projectors, like 4x1 or 2x2, whatever it might be. But this is literally just 1x1, and we're happy with that. And that's pretty much all you need to do on these machines for now. So let's minimize those. And then I'm going to run the server.exe program here on my main desktop. One thing you notice is that it's not DPI sensitive. So although I'm running at 4K here and I've got it set, I think, to 150%, it doesn't scale this window. So something to be aware of. But I'll create a new project. And when you create a new project, you get to set up a couple of things. So the most important thing is to tell it what kind of screen you have. Now you can see it does a bunch of different. So this is for any old surface that you might have of any old shape. That's just a flat plane. That's cylindrical, which is what we want. But then you've also got the so-called partial dome, which is basically cylindrical in two dimensions. So it's a segment of a sphere, basically, or a dome, as it likes to say. This is a segment of a horseshoe. So imagine that you took a sphere and then sort of stretched it in one direction into a horseshoe sort of shape. Then this would be a section of that. This is the horseshoe with just flat sides. This is a full dome if you're using fisheye. This is full dome if you're not. I've no idea what the difference is between those. Multiplane, worth looking at. This is what a lot of simulators do use. So multiple flat surfaces. You can get a pretty good facsimile. The trouble is that at the join here where the angles change, you're always going to get a little bit of visual disturbance. It will never look as good as a properly smoothed out cylindrical projection would. I've never seen anybody using a cone screen for anything, but I'm sure there must be a use case for it. And then the cave, this is where you would have 6 projection screens covering each of the faces of a cube. Facing inwards, obviously, you would be standing inside the cube. You sometimes see these in labs at universities, but obviously they take an awful lot of space. But for kind of virtual reality without the goggles, it's probably the only way that you can realistically do it right now. And it's good to know that the software actually provides support for that if that's your bag, but it's not. The cylinder is where we want to be. You also get the option to do stacked projections. This is where you'd have more than one projector projecting onto the same screen or bit of screen. You might do that if you were projecting in 3D, for example. So you might have 2 separate projectors, one for each eye view. That's how they do it in the real D systems in the cinema. And then you have 2 more choices. You can map on camera or map on projector. Now, map on camera is where you'll use a camera, in this case a webcam, to help do your mapping. And map on camera is the best way to do this because it lets you automate an awful lot of the process. Map on projector, then you still need to do quite a lot of manual work. aligning various points on the screen, and you would need to sort of mark up your screen with a grid of markers to show various different points. You can still do that anyway, and it comes in handy for a later step that I'll show you, but you don't actually need to do it, at least not with a regularly shaped screen like this. So I found it's just as easy to do without, which is just as well because it takes ages to measure out and put them in the exact point that you want on the screen. So at this point we can create that project with those parameters, and then it actually runs the proper UI, and this is the proper UI, and it follows kind of a wizard format, and you go step by step from step 1 right the way through step 7. Only 1 and 2 are available to us at the moment. If I expand this, if I maximize it, get a lot of screen real estate, but as you can see, everything's a bit small over here. However, what we notice here is that it's picked up on the client machines that I've set up. So these are the ones it sees on the network, and it knows that they have one projector each. And then this is the, if you like, virtual display surface that I'm going to have. Now at the moment it's assuming that it's just a single output at 1920 by 1080. I can obviously change the resolution here, and I can change the number of projectors involved. So in my case it's 2 across by 1 down, so column by row. Columns is 2 and rows is 1. Okay, so each of these is the image from one projector. Each of the projectors then is 1920 by 1080, so that is fine. Then what you need to do, as it says, double click to assign. So I double click on this one, and it says, okay, well, which projector do you want to assign to that screen? So I'm going to say this one. I'm just going to look. Yep, that's right. Wanted to make sure I got the right one on the right thing. And then select that one for this side. Now you can't see this at the moment, but my projection screens have come up with kind of a calibration screen, which you'll see shortly. Now we can move on to the next step, which is the screen definition. Now it knows it's a circular screen because I chose that as part of the project setup. What it now wants to know is how many columns and rows am I going to mark out on that screen. Now if I was going to put physical markers on, this would be particularly important. I'm not going to, but it's good to have a decent number of columns and rows because that helps with the calculation. Now they do recommend 20 columns. I find actually 10 is alright, by 4 rows is alright. That for a screen my size, which is not huge, that's actually a pretty good grid. And I would in theory need to go and put little dots on the screen at each of these points so I could line things up later. But in actual fact, because my screen is very regular sized and regular in shape, and because my camera can see all of it and is in pretty much in, well, a position back here, it can work it out for itself. And that's part of the clever stuff here, is that if it knows enough data, it can work pretty much everything out for itself. Part of that though is it needs to know all about the dimensions of the screen. So you can put them in here directly, but it's easier to use the calculator. So the angle is 180, that's correct. The radius, well, I happen to know it is near, it's supposed to be 2 meters, but I happen to know that it's actually can't change that directly at the moment. I happen to know that it's not, it's 1.92. Sorry, the radius is 1 meter, or just under 1 meter. The diameter, excuse me, the diameter is supposed to be 2 meters, but I actually know it's 1.920. And then I know that the screen height is 0.88 meters. Oops. Try that again. And then that is 1 meter. There you go. So that's used a little bit of maths, and it's told me that my beginning and end angles are actually slightly more than 180. It's minus 92 plus 92.37. My radius is actually 0.96. Yeah, beginning and end vertical 0.44, because that's 0.88. or 880mm, and there's no tilt on it. So yeah, that's about right. That assumes, of course, that it's a properly regular cylinder. If it was off a bit, then those calculations wouldn't be 100% right. However, I have measured everything, and this is pretty much spot on right. So once you've done that, you can move on. Now the views has been enabled, so you can move on to the views tab. So any projection system is going to be made up of one or more views. In this case, this is the view of the camera that you're going to use for the camera-based setup. Now, in my case, my camera can see the whole thing, but if you had a very big screen, you might need to use multiple cameras, and here you'd need to define which bits of the screen they can all see. In my case, it's really easy because it can see everything from 1 to 10, and it can see all the rows from 1 to 4. So the camera can see all of that. And the projectors that are involved in that view are both projector 1 and projector 2. And the mapping, so map to screen grid is what we're going to use. However, you can, if you had a three-dimensional surface and you needed to be able to map to sort of random points in space, like peaks and troughs and stuff, you could do this with the reference points, but you need to kind of know where they were in terms of the 3D coordinate system. It's a level of depth I've not even got down to yet, but it just shows that the software is very, very capable of being used for pretty much any kind of display you might have. This is actually a pretty simple setup. Right, map and scan views. This is where we're going to be spending a fair amount of time. So, sorry, go back to views first. I need to select my camera. So this is, well, that's the only camera I've got. HD Pro webcam. It's a Logitech C920. It's a pretty good one. It does a 2K resolution, so 2304 by 1536. Only does that at 2 FPS, which is going to look very stuttery, but actually is fine. There's no reason not to. And the more pixels you have, the more accurate your mapping is going to be. So I'd say always go as high as you can. I select that, and now finally we'll see the image. Okay, so that's the image from the projector. You can actually see the screen. It's just moved a little bit, so I just need to shift it very slightly. Okay, so now we can see the whole screen. You can also just about see my chair in the corner there. I suppose if I wave, hello. I shall try and stay out of the way. You don't particularly want to be looking at me. But this is the camera that we'll do all the configuration with. So now we can move on to map and scan views. And we get the picture here. Now, there are multiple grids at play. So you have your screen grid, which defines the shape and extent of the screen. And then you have a mask grid. Now all the mask grid does is it cuts out bits of the picture that you don't want to care about. And you want to do that because otherwise the camera recognition systems can pick up on bits and pieces that you don't want. So I'm going to set the mask grid first. Now, mask grid and all these grids are defined by a certain number of points. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3 points horizontally, 1, 2, 3 points vertically. I'm going to cut that down to 2 each. So basically, it's a square or a rectangle, and I'm just going to drag those to the edges of the projection display. About there. And remember that anything that's outside of this mask will not get used for calibration. So that looks to be about right. Yeah, it's about right. Interestingly, I just noted that my new projectors actually cast a tiny bit of shadow in the upper right corner of the opposite projector's light field, which would be irritating, except I'm not going to have anything displayed there, so I don't really care. Otherwise I'd have to start moving the projectors around, which would be quite irritating at this point, as it's a lot of work to get these things set up. Okay, so having made a rectangle, I now want to get the mask closer to the actual shape of the screen. So I'm now going to increase the number of horizontal points. So you go to 3. I'm just going to bring that down to there, which is about the middle. And there, which is about the middle. So the middle is where those little wooden projections are. Okay, and now we add some more points. I happen to know that this is the ideal number of points, so 7 across the bottom and top. At this point we can start using the keyboard shortcuts, get these as close as possible to the outline of the screen. You can see that the line conforms quite nicely because the screen is pretty regular, and perhaps more importantly the view from the camera is pretty much bang on central. And this is going to be important later when we come to the calibration, because if it wasn't, we'd have a lot more difficulty getting things straight, and we'd end up using marker points on the screen, which I have done, but like I said, it takes a long time to measure it all out, and then you've got to take them off again later. Some people actually mark their screen up with a UV pen so that it can only be seen under UV light, and then when they do the configuration like this, they just take a UV torch or something and shine it on there. There you go. So there's a little bit of distortion here, very slightly. We don't need to worry about that. As I say, this is just the mask. So everything outside this will no longer be considered when it's doing its configuration. If you go back to the screen, you can drag all these points manually to fit the screen shape. And that's what you do if you had lots of markers. But the software is capable of doing it for you automatically. However, it does need a few points to begin with. It needs a minimum of 6 points. So now what we can do is mark corner here, corner here, corner here, corner here, and then there, and that there. So that's actually 6 points. That's all technically you need, right? So what we could do, if we turn on auto mapping down here in the bottom left and click this auto map button, let's see what it does. So it says minimal 6 points required. The reason it's done that is because I forgot to actually set the points. So the way you set the points is you hold down Control and then you click on it. So now they're fixed points. I actually want to move that just a tad. There you go. Try it again. You do get some little minor errors, but look at that. Yeah? That's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Obviously you can correct these manually, so I can bring this down here, and this down a little bit, and this can come down a little bit. They look okay. This needs to come down a little bit. Maybe this needs to come down just a tad. These need to go up some. You can zoom in on this as well, so I think it's forget what key it is to zoom in, but I'm so used to doing this, I actually know pretty much where everything is. So this one needs to go up a bit. So there's this and this. So that is pretty close to being spot on. So you just make a few more minor adjustments. Slightly off here. Let's just correct that. So that's nice and straight, that's nice and straight. That was pretty good. Don't know how you feel about that, but I think that was pretty good. That was pretty minimal effort. Now, it's not necessarily perfect, and you can keep adjusting these until you're very, very happy with it. But yeah, that's good enough for a start. Now, what we need to do is tell it about the projectors. So you've got these two projector tabs here. Now, again, you've got a grid square. And again, you could set this up yourself manually if you wanted to, but you don't need to, because this is where the camera comes in handy. But you can see that the output from each projector is marked up. But in fact, you can auto map this. So again, this is where the camera comes in handy. So when I ask it to recognize the projector image, it will use a variety of patterns that will flash on the screen to work out where they are, and then you need to tweak the settings until it gets them as right as it can do. So let's just try. So down here on the bottom right are the controls for that, and turn camera scanning on. So the grid goes away. So without camera scanning, you would need to set that all up yourself. But with camera scanning, you don't need to. And we can say recognize projector circles. Okay. So I'll click on that. Now you can't see it, but there are various different patterns flashing on the screen behind me. And there is the result. So the green circles are the ones that's recognised, and the white circles are the ones that it hasn't. So it's not recognised a lot. Part of the reason for that is that it's quite light in this room. Even though I've got the blinds shut, it's pretty strong sunlight outside, and that's reducing the available contrast. So, and you can fiddle with the size and distribution of the circles to help with that, but the single biggest thing to do is turn on black and white. So now it's only really scanning in shades of black and white. I happen to know that 200, yeah, which we've got, is the right number. If we do recognise circles now, again, it's having to think about it. We should get a lot more recognised. Probably not all of them. Yeah. So a lot more recognised there. I'm going to increase the circle size to 1.5. Recognise them again. The more circles are recognised, the better the mapping is going to be. So really you want to recognise them all if you can. And you see that's recognised all apart from these ones in the top row and a couple at the bottom. Now, ideally I'd like to get these recognised, but the problem with that is that they're not whole circles. Now, you do the same on projector 2. So some of the settings are universal, some of them are not. So the black and white threshold 200, circle size at 1.6. Let's just recognise away. And this really is where you want to spend most of your time until you get it all recognised. So, how do I recognise these? I think it may because they're just a little bit too close. So I'm actually going to increase the distance. And so I have pretty much all of the circles on the right recognised as well. So having got pretty much everything right on the left and the right, I can now attempt to actually map the projectors together and see what it will recognise. So to do that, we go back to the screen tab. So you can see it's drawn a variety of boxes here. So these boxes here with these lines, this represents what it thinks the projector's light cone looks like, and as you can see, it's actually pretty much bang on right there. And then the red line shows what it thinks the red and yellow line, sorry, show what it thinks the shape of the screen looks like. So now it knows the shape of the projections and it knows the shape of the screen. It can calculate the right mapping between them. So you need to go down here, bottom right, and there's a little icon that says scan projectors in view. We do that, it's going to repeat the process again for each projector. Also, they get pretty tedious if you had a lot, but this is the step where you've got to get it right, otherwise your mapping will not be right. Doing projector 2. Okay. Now then, the red circles are the ones that it doesn't recognise, or the ones that go off the view. That's fine, there's only a small number of them. That should not affect the warping much, if at all. Once you've reached this point, you're where you need to be. So I'm just going to save my project to be on the safe side. I'm going to call this 1906 because it's the 19th of June today. And at this point I can try calculating the warp and see what it comes out at. So you can use the calculate button up here. Oh, well, I'd want to register for Space Junkies closed beta, but there you go. And there it is. So that's not bad. Now, it's not perfect either. So you can see, for example, some of the line disappears off at the top here. Yeah, and I'm looking at the actual physical screen behind me, and yes, it does. And some of it disappears off here, and this is just basically because the screen marking is not perfect. So we need to adjust that, and we can do that easily enough. So, for example, yeah, I can see that point's just slightly off the bottom of the screen. So let's just move that up a bit. So 4 points, 2, 3. There. That one's okay. Those are okay. That needs to come up a little bit. Needs to come up a bit. As does that, and that. And that, and then this one needs to come up at 2 or 3, and this one needs to come up at 2 there. Up at the top again, we've got a few not quite right, so down with this, down with this, down with that, down with that, down with that one down one. I think the rest are okay. So having done that, hit calculate again. Right, so that's better. You can see that the lines that are off the screen are not so bad. So a little bit more there, a little bit more there. And you just keep doing this until you're happy with it. But things are straight where they need to be straight. Okay, so after a fair bit of tweaking, I now have a blend and a warp that I'm pretty happy with. So you can see this is the view from the camera. the test pattern on the screen. Obviously you can't see the screen itself that I can see from here, but it looks pretty good. It's pretty well blended in the middle as well. All the lines are pretty straight, so on the whole I'm pretty happy with that, and I can go forward and use that for the next step, which is the edge blending. Now what you can really do here is fiddle with this graph. I strongly suggest that you don't. Here's the thing about the edge blending. It will not be perfect. You will in some cases be able to see a stripe of overlap between the projectors, and it's very simple. Why? Different projectors, different screens obviously have slightly different properties at slightly different wavelengths of light, so depending on the exact balance of colours that you have visible at any given moment, you may get a nice smooth blend one into the other, or you may get a little bit of a band that you can see. Sorry about the noise of the circular saw outside, by the way. Someone's just decided to do a bit of work with power tools, obviously. I could shut the window, but it's really hot in here. Anyway, I would strongly advise you to leave all this alone and leave it with the default. To my eyes, that has always produced the best result. I did fiddle with it manually when I had a manual blend and found better results with certain manual blends, but I think that had to do with the way that I'd set up the manual blend. And if you leave it like this, it just tends to work. So the final step in the process is getting your perspective correct. So you go into the perspective tab like this, you get this sort of model view of the screen. You can see where the projector light hits the screen. That's the green outline there, and that's about right. And this represents your viewpoint if you were standing directly in front of the middle of the screen. The light rays emanating out from here, you see, that would be the view that you would see. In order to calculate the perspective, you need to set up a view frustum. And a view frustum is basically a viewport onto a three-dimensional scene. Okay, up here on the top left, I'm going to turn on asymmetric frustums. The reason why is because I know P3D supports them, and I actually do need to change the eye point, because when I'm sitting in my simulator, my eye point is not here. My eye point is actually more like here, because my screen starts quite high up. And if I just did it this way, then the perspective correction wouldn't be right. You can move these things around. I'm not going to yet. I'm going to say find frustums. Okay, so now it's found the view frustums. These here represent the view frustums, and the reason they're curved is because they are they're basically they're the flat image as you would see them if you had your projector mounted directly here. So that's where the light would go. Now in my actual situation, I don't have that. You can see here are the two view frustums. They're crossing over at this point, which is of course where the two projectors blend. Okay, that's fine. We can change the picture to the tunnel. Right, when you move it around, you see the perspective shifting. So if I move it to about here, these lines all look straight, even though it's a curved surface. If I move it, you can see clearly they're curved. And on my projector, I can see the same image, and the lines are clearly curved. Now, what can we do about that? It's really quite hard to get this positioned right. Doesn't rotate very well, but I can do a little trick by saying center, then back to perspective. Yay! So we're dead centered, it all looks fine. Based on those frustums, I can say calculate perspective. So have a think about it. And now I can actually see that tunnel image on my screen, and yes indeed, it does look corrected. Which is exactly what you want. And that naively would give me the perspective corrected view that I want, but as I mentioned, I need to lower my eye point. The way to lower the eye point is to move the frustums around, and that's what the asymmetric bit's about, which P3D can do, but I'm not sure other packages can do. So you might be a bit out of luck if you're in a similar situation to me, using something like X-Plane. In order to get the eye point to go down, what I actually need to do is just to adjust the eye point here. So that moves it left and right. That moves it back and forth. This one moves it up or down. That should be 35 degrees. Just find the frustums again, there you go. That moves the eye point up. That moves the eye point down. So we'll move the eye point down to where we want it to be. In my case, the eye point should be about there, I believe. Now I can come in and adjust this later. Now what you notice is that this frustum here is now, this is cutting this bit of the display off, and this bit isn't included. So I need to move that. So this is where this bit comes in. I was fiddling with earlier. So if I adjust the top so that these corners fit onto the screen, there you go. And I adjust the bottom so that their corners coincide with the screen there. And I've just got to do it on projector 2 as well. So and then I hit calculate perspective again. And I'll look at my screen. So yes, indeed, that does look correct from where it should be, where my actual eye point should be. I could probably do lowering it a little bit more. Because the first time I did this, it wasn't quite low enough. Let me adjust these again. Yep, that looks about right. Okay, so having got all of that, I'm just going to save the project. Now we can export all of that. Let's go to the export page. Notice it says asymmetric frustums are not supported by some applications, and indeed they're not. So this screen tells us what it is that we're actually going to export. So you can export a single frustum, which is the single virtual view. Perspective corrected multi-frustums, which is the multi-Pro Calib views. And then here are some formats that it can output. So it can do prepared 3D version 3.3 plus using a view groups file, which is what I'm actually going to do. Prepare 3D 2 or 3 using an fxml file, which is like a saved view, and FSX or prepare 3D with a .flight file. In these two cases, it's going to create custom cameras. In this case, it's just going to create a view group. View groups are obviously new-ish in version 3 of prepare 3D. It's the best way to do it, especially when you're doing multi-channel, as I am. So we want that one on. The others can be off. Xplane we don't want. We don't want DCS World. The general ones, you can use them, but I don't know what in. But if you just want to be able to see the data in a simple XML format, you can export those. I'm not entirely sure what template's supposed to be for. And you can export frustum preview images as well, but we don't need those. By default, it's going to export them into a folder called export within the Immersive Display Pro folder, and I'll leave it like that. And then we just need to give it a prefix. The prefix is going to be 1906 for the project name. And then we say export data. And if we look in the folder, in the export file, sort by date, you can see here are the 1906 files that we had. So this view groups will be used for P3D. And then these Pro Calib files are used in the Immersive Display Pro tool to set things up. So now we need to do that. Okay, so here we are. Back on the desktop, we've closed the tool. I've got my type VNC views over on my two image generator machines here, and I've moved over all of these files. Now what I'm going to need is so this is sim 1. I'm going to need that one and that one. So I'm going to copy these into here. See, there are some existing ProCalib files that we've been using, and then I'm going to start Immersive Display Pro. It'll probably moan about the display configuration. No, it hasn't. You see at the moment it's using these older ProCalib files. Now I want to change those. So I right click and say external calibration. Then it wants me to find the external calibration files. Well, I've dumped them inside here. This is the best place for them, inside the calib. So you say single. And then you say multi, and it'll say you want to use single view calibration file. Yes, for desktop warping. Yes, we'd like to use that. So you've got multi for multi and single for desktop warping, which we won't be using. And then we just repeat that process on the other machine. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is to configure P3D itself. Now for that, I need to tweak the view groups which are set up on all of my machines. So if I were doing Lockheed Martin's multi-channel, the view group could be done in one place, just on the host machine, but I'm actually going to be using a wide view for my multi-channel, and so the view groups need to be set up on each individual PC. And the way that we'll do that is we'll go into viewgroups.xml. And we know which projector is on which machine, so we know that projector 1 is on machine 1 and projector 2 is on machine 2. Okay, so let's just copy this view group piece of XML. Now if we go and find it's not actually in there, it's in users, app data, roaming. I just love all these. No, it's not. Oh, this one's in the program data. Knowing where to find appropriate files is kind of important. Yeah, view groups XML. Edit those. So you can see it already has an Immersive Calibration Pro view group here. Which I'm going to overwrite because I've got different settings. I'll get rid of this because this is projector 1. This is sim 2, which has just projector 2. Okay. And I'll save that. And similar deal on this machine. Okay, so switching to my handheld camera, here is the final result, and it ain't bad actually, not bad at all. So a little bit closer here, you can see things join in the middle quite nicely. There is a slightly visible band between them, and this is where the two projectors overlap, and even if the projector picture is completely black, you get a little bit of a doubled up light bleed. So there's unlike say an OLED TV where black is black, in an LED projector situation, black is merely as opaque as it gets, but it still lets some light through, and so that's the basic light that you would see on the screen, and then where the projectors cross over each other in the blend zone in the middle, that basic light is doubled up. It's very faint, so you can't generally see it unless you're looking. I can probably, I'm not sure you can see that. I can just about see it with my naked eye, but I'm not sure if you can see it with the camera when they blend together. But I'm not really that bothered about it. You wouldn't notice it in reality. What you will notice is that the sort of the shape of the cockpit is a little bit distorted. from what it would be, and this is all to do with the cylindrical distortion for the eye point. So obviously normally I'd be sitting around about here looking at this eye point there. As you can see, that all looks pretty undistorted. If I look up, again, it looks undistorted. So the curvature that you can see here, you don't see there because of your eye point, and that's the miracle, if you like, of Immersive Calibration Pro. It knows how to first correct for the distortion of the screen, and then it also knows how to correct for the view that P3D generates. So it tells P3D to generate a view, and if you turned off the warping, you see it's basically just a view sort of looking out that sort of way, pretty straightforwardly, but it's a little bit fish-eyed, and then this undoes the fisheye in one direction, sort of does it in the other to correct it for the screen. And as if by magic, if we look straight out to the left now, why, there's our wing. And if we look straight out to the right, again, there is our wing. So this is a true 180 degree. And objects here do not look stretched. And as they move across the horizon, they don't look stretched. And a runway sort of across the screen no longer looks like it's running around a curve, it looks like it's straight. And that is what I've been missing all these months, and now that I've got it, I'm pretty damn chuffed. Anyway, let's just switch back to my desktop. Okay, so back on the desktop, looking in the Type VNC view, you can see actually how the magic works. So this is how the actual output of the monitor looks, and then this is the curvature that's been added in by the warping software. So if, for example, I go into Immersive Display Pro and say exit, you see it does that. So it changes back to a standard projection. So this is the view that was generated in the view groups that looks out at this particular angle and gets you the whole 90 degrees sort of sweep from here to here, and then the other one does the other thing. If you were to look on the actual projector screen at the moment, all of that would be warped and bowed. It would kind of be bowed down here. So the warping and blending tool corrects it to the point where what you see from your eye point is basically this. And you really can't do it any other way. Trying to do this manually would require so much adjustment, so many calculations, and I wouldn't even like to think how you would do it. I mean, I know people have done it back in the day, when people were originally building simulators with curved screens. There was no easy way to do it. They would generally slice up the screen into lots of windows, get the field of view as narrow as they could, and sort of try and work out the specific angles. But then, straight lines were still not quite straight. They were ever so slightly bent at the intersection between each window. Whereas with this mechanism, with the warping software actually bending things for you, the lines are as close to absolutely straight as you're ever going to get. And if I turn the warping back on by reopening the Fly-Lease software, you see it goes back to where it should be. So there you go. In a nutshell, that is how to set up a 180 degree perspective corrected view using Immersive Display Pro with Immersive Calibration Pro, using a camera on a 180 degree curved screen. I hope that's been of some use. If you've got a similar use case to mine, you can pretty much follow these instructions. Even if not, if you're working on a 210 degree, 220 degree view, you can still apply the same techniques. You just need to have 3 projectors and 3 views. You probably have to use more than one camera, but it's all fairly intuitive once you understand how the various mappings work. It all kind of makes sense pretty quickly. So anyway, there you go. Hope that video was useful, and if you liked it, then click the like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel and know when I post other videos, then do that, and I'll see you back here very soon. Thanks very much.